Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are unpacking something absolutely fascinating. It's a simulation called The Fix. Essentially, it uses a fictional corporate mystery to teach high school students about cognitive biases. You know, if you've ever wondered how on earth to teach complex psychology without literally putting people to sleep with a dry textbook, well, you're definitely in the right place. Let's get into it.
Okay, I want you to put yourself right in the shoes of a junior analyst. You've just been handed a failing business, a brewery, by its extremely confident founder, a guy named Neil. Imagine you walk into Meridian Consulting Group, and Neil tells you exactly why his company, Bridgewater Brewing, is bleeding revenue. He tells a fantastic story. He completely looks the part, and he is absolutely 100% certain he knows the root cause. But here's the catch, and this is the exact trap the simulation sets on day one. It forces us to ask a really uncomfortable question. Are we confusing a founder's confidence with actual hard operational evidence? I mean, it is so incredibly easy to just assume the person in charge knows best, right? But as we'll see, confidence is absolutely not the same thing as data. So here is how we're going to step through this 12-day meta-narrative. We'll hit the Bridgewater mystery, then testing quiet data, the scoring process, the 3 analyst paths, the reveal, and finally, workplace capacities. All right, starting with Section 1, the Bridgewater Brewing Mystery, where we enter the simulation.
So you are dropped directly into the deep end of this investigation, and you've got a limited budget. Neil is pointing the finger at a shiny new competitor, Ironside, blaming them for his declining revenue. And honestly, it sounds totally plausible. But it's a massive trap. Neil's narrative is what we call a loud signal. It's designed specifically to test if students will just swallow the easy story or if they'll rigorously validate it. Will they actually do the digging or just take the boss's word for it?
Moving right along to Section 2, testing the quiet data. This is all about loud signals versus decisive evidence. You know, the loudest voice in the room is rarely the most accurate. The real truth? It usually hides in the boring, unglamorous spreadsheets. And this sets up a brilliant aha moment on day 3. You find a note from a floor worker named Maya. She noticed the quality of the beers started slipping 22 months ago. Now, do the math. That is 4 whole months before that new competitor even opened their doors. You simply cannot blame a competitor for a problem that literally started before they existed. Then, this location variance data completely seals the deal. Think about this. You have 2 tap rooms, Centerville and Huber Heights. They are practically the exact same distance from the competitor, right around 2 miles. Yet Huber Heights maintained a really high internal quality score, and their revenue only dropped 8%. Meanwhile, Centerville's quality tanked, and they lost a massive 31%. So the data quietly but firmly proves that internal quality, not the shiny new competitor, is the real issue here. Okay, let's pull back the curtain a bit for Section 3, scoring process over answers, looking at how the simulation actually grades. Now, inside the student's workbook dashboard, the grading is entirely automated. But here is the genius part. It completely ignores whether a student just guessed and got lucky. Instead, it meticulously tracks 4 distinct counters: diagnostic accuracy, evidence tested, stakeholder respect, and reasoning discipline. Basically, it's rewarding the grit of your investigation and how tightly your diagnosis actually matches the evidence you pulled. The core philosophy driving this is that there are no wrong diagnoses to fear. It's such a brilliant design because it protects students from that paralyzing fear of failure. It guarantees that a cautious, rigorous reasoner is always going to outscore a lucky guesser. It's entirely about how you think, not just magically landing on the right answer. Next up is Section 4, the 3 analyst paths, also known as the frozen oracle. To really prove this whole mathematical philosophy, the simulation's architects encoded 3 very distinct analyst paths. First, you have the narrative taker. This person just blindly believes Neil, and they fail miserably, scoring a measly 43 points. Then there's the contrarian. They actually figure out the math, but they totally disrespect the founder in the process, which severely tanks their score down to about 108. But then look at the validator. This student tests the math, finds the truth, and respectfully presents it. They absolutely crush it with over 240 points. The methodical, quote-unquote boring choice totally wins. And this reinforces such an invaluable lesson. It teaches students how to tell a boss they are wrong without completely destroying the workplace relationship. Because let's be honest, it is not enough to just be right.
To actually survive and thrive in the real business world, you have to be correct while still maintaining professional trust. Which brings us to the climax in Section 5, the Day 11 reveal. This is all about discovery-first cognitive science. Okay, here's where the absolute pedagogical magic of this discovery-first method really takes center stage. Everything these students have wrestled with for 2 straight weeks leads right up to Day 11. By intentionally withholding all the fancy psychological terms until the very end, that moment of recognition becomes incredibly powerful. Think about it. If you just tell a student, hey, you suffer from confirmation bias, they instantly get defensive, right? But if you let them make the mistake naturally and then show them what they just did, man, that lesson sticks forever. So, Neil's super confident trap from day 1 is finally revealed to the class as a classic authority bias. They realized they felt for his stories simply because he was the founder and he spoke with conviction. It's a real light bulb moment where they get to see exactly how this well-documented psychological pull literally manipulated their own decision-making process. And honestly, the hits just keep coming. The teacher is able to bridge the students' specific mistakes directly to foundational cognitive science. Did they take the easy, typical-sounding story? Well, that's the representativeness heuristic. Did they hyper-focus on the loud news about the shiny new competitor while totally ignoring the boring baseline data? That right there is base rate neglect. It is just an absolute masterclass in applied psychology. Finally, we arrive at Section 6, building real workplace capacities, taking this far beyond the simulation itself. Now we get to translate this entire fictional brewery crisis into tangible, real-world skills. For example, there's an activity on Day 8 with a brutal creative constraint where funding is suddenly capped at $50,000. Through that, students have to actively practice emotional regulation under pressure. They aren't just sitting there memorizing vocab words off a flashcard. They're actively practicing how not to completely freeze up during a budget cut and how to filter out garbage information in a really noisy room. And the simulation doesn't just end with some boring, simple multiple-choice test. No way. It ends with a really rigorous writing assignment. Students actually have to apply their hard-earned pattern recognition to articulate exactly how they're going to prevent themselves from falling for these exact same traps when they get out into the real world. Because the ultimate goal here is shifting a student's reliance away from how a story feels and grounding them in what the quiet data actually proves. They leave the simulation equipped with a concrete, totally usable rule for distinguishing a true, factual diagnosis from a merely confident one. Ultimately, by letting the evidence do the teaching, this simulation prepares learners for the incredibly complex, noisy reality of the modern workplace. It proves, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that reasoning discipline and critical thinking aren't just academic exercises. They are quite literally the ultimate professional survival skills. So I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. In your own work, the next time a highly confident leader hands you a perfectly articulated but entirely wrong explanation, how are you going to spot it? Take a moment today to really think about the quiet data in your own professional life. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember, always keep questioning the easy story.